Hi everyone. I thought I'd just make this video particularly for those of you who are coming from Finale into Dorico, because Finale has now decided to be discontinued, that I'd make this quick video and maybe actually a few other videos, just some quick getting started kind of things so you can actually see someone do some inputting. So I'm about to start working on a production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and so I'm typing in, making some tracks, typing in some of the orchestration into Dorico. This is just a quick video to show you how you might work through typing in something that you already have access to. So I've already started, so you'll have to forgive me for that. I'm going to pick up where I left off at bar 29, which is over the page. Okay, so here I've already put the rehearsal mark in, but I'm missing the tempo. So I click where I am, want the tempo to be. Shift T for the tempo to pop over to pop up. Poco, Peel, oopsie daisies. Hold the U to get Apple's standard accent picker up. Poco P also. And if you're interested in playback, just for a second, if I hit Command 8 to pull up the lower panel, you can see that anything like Pio Mosso or Meno Mosso, the playback is relative to the current tempo. So this is going to be 110%, so a little bit quicker. And you can, of course, change that. Hide that away, and let's get started. So in the bass stuff, press Enter to enter input mode, and the right arrow to get to the right spot. Okay. 6 for quarter note, F. 8 for whole note, Control to go to the lower octave, and B. Right? Now on a dotted minim, I can do one of two things. I could go 7 for minim and then hit dot, right? Or, let's go back for a second, I could double hit minim and get a dot that way. Then Option Shift D to go up, back to crotchet, Option Shift D to go up, minim, Control G to go down for a G, down to a C, double hit 7 for a dotted minim, up to F, and so on. So if I quickly continue filling out this line the same manner, I'm going to go a little bit quick, but I just hopefully you can follow along. You can always slow down the playback speed if you need to. Okay, now I've got a minim tied to a quaver. So I'm going to put my minim in, right? And then I'm going to hit T for tie, and I'm going to hit quaver. And now I want to tie to a quaver, but also I want my crescendo to start there. So I'm going to hit crescendo. So shift to access the, so shift comma, which will access the symbol that looks like a crescendo, the less than symbol. Then hit B. So that will start my crescendo at the current input point, and my crescendo will continue until I add a dynamic or tell it to stop. So if I hit Option Shift F, now add the F, right? The crescendo keeps extending. Crotchet up to B, keeps extending, and now I want it to stop, the crescendo. I want to keep inputting notes, but I want the crescendo to stop. There's no dynamic that the crescendo goes to, so I need to stop it manually with Shift /. And then I can go about my merry way, and the crescendo won't keep moving. Okay, now I've got a fermata. The caret, this orange line here, is at the position I want my fermata at. So I can hit Shift H for holds and pauses, quickly type in fermata, press Enter, and in it goes. I've also got a rit there. I can hit Shift T, rit, Enter. Now, the one thing I'd note is that this rit is currently only tied to that third beat of the bar. So it starts from the third beat and ends at the fourth beat. We can change that in a minute. You have to be out of note input mode to do that, but I want to just kind of show you how much you can get done in note input mode first. Now, I want to go to the bar line to make that a double bar line. I could do one of two things. I could hit the arrow, or, and this is going to be really useful, Command arrow jumps to the next bar line. So now I want a double bar line, Shift B, 2 pipes, because that's what a double bar line looks like, or I could type double, hit Enter. I want a rehearsal mark, Shift A for rehearsal marks. I want a new tempo, Shift T, strict moderate 4, Enter. Okay, that's all gone up there. Now I want to go 4 bars of nothing, so I go Command 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. Okay, now I need a dynamic, Shift D for dynamic. Whoops, yep, there you are. Forte, enter. Just F, enter rather. Shift P for a playing technique. Arco. If you type partway and you get a list come up, you can scroll through the list. If you type most of the way and there's only one left, you can scroll down and hit enter. Or if you type the whole thing, you need to double press enter. That's generally what I do because it's what I'm used to. Okay, I want accent. Accent is the left bracket. Now, I've entered this into the wrong octave, and I've done it because my last note, I forgot what it was. I don't know whether I need to go up or down, so I just hit F. So I want to shift octaves. I go Command, Option, Up. We'll jump to the higher octave. Now that I know that the next one is below it, I'll hit C, G, D, Option Shift to go up for F, C. Okay, now I've got a meter change. Shift M for meter, 2/4. And just give it a second. There it is. Then we go let's put our RAL in. Poco, RAL. I use Shift T to get the tempo pop over. Put that in, press go. Put my F in. Now I need to go back to 4/4. Shift M for meter, 4/4. Give it a second. It's a pretty big project that I'm working on, so it's reasonably slow. Okay, so now we've got some rests. Now, Dorico works in the idea of put in the music you want to put in and we will format it the way that we want to format it, the way that we think it should be done. So there's no music in this bar, so it says, oh, that must be a whole rest then. But the engraver for this particular copy that I'm working from decided that it was useful for the musicians to see a crotchet rest and then a dotted minim rest, or a quarter rest and a dotted half rest, because someone else in the orchestra is playing, and it would be nice to know that someone's playing on beat 1 and then they're holding beat 2. So we can force that to happen, right? So we want a quarter note rest, so I hit 6 for quarter note. I hit comma to put rest mode on. But if I type, so if I type any pitch, I always use B for some reason, you can see it's not actually doing anything because it still thinks that the best way to show this would be a full size rest, right? So what you can do is hit O, which is force duration. It's also this little button over here, force duration, right? What that does, it means whatever I input, it's going to ignore the rules of the defaults that Dorico, or you might have overridden them, have set up. So now if I input a pitch, it forces it to appear like that. Now, the next logical thing that Dorico thinks is, okay, well, I should break at the half bar, because that's a pretty common thing to do. However, this time I want to hit 7/7 to get a dotted half note rest, and then force that one as well. And I'm going to do the same thing for the next bar. Force a crotchet rest, force a dotted minim rest. Now I'm going to remember to hit O again to turn force duration off, because I want it to rewrite how it thinks it should write from now on, and then turn rest mode off with the comma. And now we have a key change. Shift K for key, and we're going to B flat major, so I type in B flat, like that. If I wanted to put in instead G minor, I would go G, lowercase, for minor, right? It doesn't really change anything about the way it looks, but if you're doing transpositions and stuff, or you're doing automatic playback and things like that, it might be useful to have it correct. Now this is actually the end of this particular number, so I'm going to have my flow end there. So if I just hit escape to get out of note input mode for a second, and I hit J. Now J brings up the jump bar. This jump bar is your friend. You will love this jump bar. Anytime you want to do anything and you don't know the keyboard shortcut, hit J, because you can pretty much type in anything you like. So what I want to do is I want this flow to stop where the last thing I've input is. So there's this function called trim flow. Now if I just show you, it's under edit. I think it's under edit. No, it's under write, maybe. So you can see why this would be useful, because I have no idea where it is. There it is, trim flow, right down the bottom, right? Okay, so you can see I took a long time to search for that because I have no idea where it is. So instead, if I hit J, I can just start typing trim flow, and so you can see it's come up already. If I hit enter, just give it a second, it will trim to the last thing it sees. Now, Dorico doesn't generally love having a key signature be the last thing in a bar, so it's kept a bar, right? It's kept one extra bar. What I can do is manually remove that, Shift B for bars and bar lines, go -1 to get rid of a bar. And now this is a final bar line, which we don't want, so Shift B, have a double instead. Right, and so you've forced it to end on a key signature. The only thing that's missing is Shift H for Marta and Shift H for Marta. Now, I suspect that I'm going to want this format to appear in all my other instruments, right? So what I can do is I can hold Shift and click to select those two bars, and I want to copy it to all the other string instruments, right? So I'm going to hold Option or Alt if you're on a Windows, right, and click, right, where I'd like it to paste, right? And this is just a quick paste whatever I'm currently selecting. It saves you doing Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V, right? This Alt-click is, again, one of the best things that you will ever encounter. The other best thing that you'll ever encounter, I don't need to do this, but I will do it and then I'll return it back, right, is the the swap function, right? So say I accidentally put this in the bass staff and it was meant to go in the cello staff, which I've done it a couple of times, but it's also really, really useful if you're looking at, say, a classical score where you've got two oboes and you decide you want to swap them, or if I'm working at the moment in a nice neat score and then I'm going to copy this file and make a playback oriented score, and I might need to shift some things around staves. So if I highlight the section of bass staff that I want to move, and say it's supposed to be in the viola, so I Command or Control click to also select something in the viola staff. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be the same region. Now if I right click, go paste special, and swap, right, it swaps the two things around, right? So the same notes have now been put into viola, and I could Command Option up to move them wherever I need to. I'm just going to go back a little bit because I don't need that. But that's also a really powerful tool, right? Okay. This is pretty much done. The only thing I want to do is tidy up these rails, right? So this rail, remember, is currently only over 1 beat, right? If you're not in note input mode and you've got an tempo or something already put in, and it's nearby, it will assume that you want the rail all the way up to the tempo, and it will go that whole way. But this one didn't, right? Because there's nothing afterwards. So if I have something that extends over a region, like a rail or a crescendo or an accelerando or a diminuendo, right? It has a starting anchor, this one here, which is at the start, and an ending anchor here. If I want to move the object, and generally any object I want to shift in time in Dorico, I can hit Alt or Option and the arrow keys to move it around. Okay, I moved it back. Same with notes, right? If I grab, let's say, this note, I want to move it around, I can Alt or Option to the right and move it, blah, 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 right? Let me undo so that comes back. If I want to move the extent, if I want to move the end anchor only, I can go Option or Alt and Shift and move, and that will move the end point, right? So that one's good, that's where I want it, the downbeat of that next bar. I can do the same with this one, which isn't quite right, downbeat of the next bar, and I think that all the others are good. I'd already put that one in, yeah. Okay. Now there's one other thing that I want to show you, and then I'm going to move on to a new part. This tied note here, say I got it wrong and I don't want it tied, right? I can cut a tie with this tool here, which is a U keyboard command. So I can hit U, and it cuts all ties, right? And then you can do whatever you need to with it. I'm going to replace that tie with T because I do need it. And I just want to show you quickly that crescendos, if I go Alt and arrow, you can move them. If I Alt Shift arrow, I can move where they land, right? Okay, I'm going to get a new part up. Let me just move that into a position that's good for me. Find the bit that I'm up to. Just ignore my crazy arrowness. There it is. Okay. There you go. I can see everything. Let's go back to the start of this flow. Okay. So, once I've input, obviously, the tempo markings and the key signatures and the meters the first time, I don't need to do that each time, which is why I generally start with the bass part, because the bass parts are usually not particularly complicated. It's nice and easy to focus on the system stuff, the stuff that appears in every part. Okay, so I have 4 bars of rest, so I'm going to click right at the start. I'm going to enter to hit no input mode, command write 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Shift D and P. I'm not going to put that under dialogue in, but you could go, I might just show you P under dialogue, enter, it will come up exactly as you'd expect. And I presume you can put the dash in there as well, but I don't need to. Okay, now I could do one of 2 things here. I could hit 9 to get a breathe, right, and hit E. I want it down like that. Or I could hit 8 to get a semi-breathe, put in my E in the right pitch, hit T for tie, and E, right, again. Now, Dorico thinks that I don't actually need to show that E natural. And I'd say Dorico's probably right, that E natural doesn't come after an E flat, so it's probably not a needed cautionary. However, if you want to, you can force it by hitting 0 for E natural. Right? Okay. After that, I've got a D natural that is up. So I'm going to go, because if I hit D, it's going to go to the nearest one, which is down. So Option Shift D. Personally, myself, I am at the point where I am so quick with it that I use Option Shift and Control even without needing to. So even if it's going to be the nearest note, right? And I might, in a minute, I might show you some quick entry just to kind of prove that it can be done. Okay, now I've got a mezzo forte piano, Shift D, MFP. My personal settings have a dash between MF and P, but you can change that in engraving options, which is Command Shift E if you're interested. In fact, let me quickly show you. Dynamics, be down here somewhere, I imagine. This is all spacing. Maybe I missed it. Subito stuff. Appearance of separators for combined dynamics, right? So hyphen, colon, slash, space, and you can say only use it for things like mezzo forte, right? So if instead I put forte piano, it would come up without a dash, but it thinks that MF needs that separator, right? Okay, I want an accent, so I'll use the left bracket for my accent. Flat is the dash symbol, and then B. Whoops, I got the wrong pitch, wrong duration, forgot. Let's try it again. Right. Okay, now the one exception, if you're on a Mac, right, and you want to input a B above the staff, right, you would normally use Option Shift B. However, there is a problem with Option Shift B, which is that the framework that Dorico's built on, Qt, doesn't for some reason like accessing Option Shift B. I'm not super familiar with the reason why. So there's basically everything works fine. Option Shift any pitch to go up, or Control pitch to go down, except for going up to a B. I'm kind of just used to this now, so I put in a B. It goes down if down is nearer, and then I just flick it up the octave. But if you are someone who really doesn't like that, and I will admit that that's probably the slowest point of my workflow, you can go into your preferences and set a new key command for that one if you like. However, I suspect many of you will use MIDI keyboard entry, so it'll be less important. But I'm on a laptop and I do a lot of this work on the go, so I actually find my keyboard entry is quite quick. Okay, so last thing before we move on is this B should have a tremolo, right? So if I hit Shift R for repeats and put in 3 slashes, because it's a 3-slash tremolo, and hit enter, I get, on the last selected note, I get those 3 slashes. So that's great. I no longer need accents, turn that off. I need MP, right? Minim down to a D. S for slur to an E. Shift S to turn my slur off, to stop it from going to new notes. Okay. 8 for a semi-breve. F, F, F. I'll just put in the next little bit on my own. Right. Oh no, I got my, I was going to say I missed a poco rip. I didn't. Okay. Now I want an up bow while I'm working. Shift P, playback technique. Playing technique, rather. Up bow. And I'm just going to keep going. Okay. This next passage, right, I'm going to put it all in really quickly, but I'm just going to explain it first, right? So I'm going to do exactly what I've been doing. I'm going to use the Option Shift and a pitch to go up, Control pitch to go down. I'm going to use Shift D to get the dynamics popover to put in my piano. I'm also going to use the hairpin, right, the less than symbol, Shift comma on your keyboard, to put in this crescendo poco a poco, and my other crescendo and my diminuendo, and my slurs I'm going to use S and Shift S to stop it. I'm going to put this this system in quickly in one kind of lot, and then I'll go back and tweak it to make it look the same, right? So I go Shift D P 7 D S, add my hairpin C B A, right? I'm going to add another hairpin, stop my slur G, stop my slur, add my dynamic, start a new slur, right, there we go, press done. Okay, I really don't like how this dynamics looks, and that's because this is linked to the forte, but this one isn't. I also put it in the wrong spot, oops. Option move over, Option Shift to bring the extent around. These ones aren't linked to anything. I would love it if these 3 here appeared on together, right? That's how they should appear. And it's how they probably would appear if I hadn't messed this up, right? If I'd have put it in the right spot, because it would be right next to an immediate dynamic. So I'm going to go click on the bar, highlight the whole bar. Now this is a key command I've set, but I really recommend it because you'll use it a lot. Option Shift D is filter dynamics for me, right? You could also right click, filter all dynamics, or you could edit, filter all dynamics, or you could jump bar, so J for jump bar, filter dynamics, right? And hit enter. But I'm going to use Alt Shift D, and then another command that I've set, again, you could access it via Shift Dynamics, or I think it might be in edit, I'm not sure. Jump bar, group dynamics, or I've set a personal command of Option G to group dynamics. So these 3 are grouped together now. So they always appear on the same line. They're stuck together. This one I don't want to appear like a hairpin. So I'm going to go Command 8. My preferences say always use hairpins. I'm pretty sure I can do this and get my crescendo typed, right? And then there is a poco a poco setting, and it works like that. But let me delete that. If I put this back in, right, I can change it by opening up the lower panel, Command 8, Properties, scroll across the Dynamics region to Gradual Style and turn that on, and change it from hairpin to crescendo diminuendo. I'm just going to show you the other options. You've got crescendo with all the dots afterwards, or crescendo written out like that, which you might see sometimes, especially in classical scores, but this is what I want, and poco a poco. that looks like it should. Okay, and I've already copied over these forced rests from before. Let's keep going. So, what's coming up? There's a tenuto symbol. Tenuto is the backslash on a Mac anyway. I think on a Windows computer it might be... I reckon it might be the tilde. I'm not quite sure. I've forgotten. I used to have a Windows computer, but I don't anymore. Otherwise, everything else that we're going to see, apart from downbow, which we input with the playback techniques. Sorry, playing techniques. I always mix them up. Pop over, Shift P. Let me just quickly show you. Shift P, downbow. Otherwise, everything else we've already seen. So I'm just going to quickly input all of this, basically up to bar 40. And then after that, we might stop there. Right, okay. So let's go back to nothing. You can put multiple dynamics in the popover, so MF and a crescendo. I've messed something up. I'll go back and change the whole octave later. You'll have to forgive me, I'm making a little bit of, taking a little bit of artistic license with where that crescendo is supposed to start. Those key command things are getting in the way, struggling to see through the black. So I may have to fix up those little bits that are hidden behind. Oh, I've also got another octave thing that I've messed up. Okay, not too bad. It was that one, and I reckon it was back here. Yes. Okay, let's have a quick look back through. So for me, as long as I have my sound on while I'm inputting, I can generally pick up most mistakes. Whoops. Just by using my ears. I can't see under that bar thing again. Okay, that's in the notes are definitely correct. Just have a quick look at the dynamics. Dynamics all look good, except these three are all linked. Yep, these ones I would like to be linked as well because they're all kind of together. So select them all like that, or actually the better thing to do would be select the bars and use my keyboard command and my keyboard command to group. I'm actually just going to take that back just so I can show you the jump by way, filter dynamics, group. And you can see you don't actually need to type out the whole thing. It comes up pretty quickly, but also it will show you the keyboard command, including any custom ones that you've set. Right, so if you need to remember what the keyboard command is for something, and you don't quite remember, you could start typing it and you can see. So if you're learning Dorico for the first time, that can be a really cool way to remember the keyboard commands, is just to have a quick look up like that. Saves you from printing off one of those jump sheets, but those pop-over jump sheets are really good. Okay, so that looks good. I just want to check I haven't missed any up bows, down bows, that kind of thing. That all looks good. Okay, let's continue on to this last bit. Okay, we've got a clef change, Shift C. I can type treble, or I can type G, and I'll get my clef change. Forte piano, 8 for a semi-breve, it's a C. Now I'm going to put my forte pianos in, but I'm not going to put my tremolos in yet. because I'm going to show you if I hold shift and back, I can stay in note input mode, select multiple notes, and then put my tremolos in. And it will apply to all of them. Command shift to jump to next bar, put my F clef back in, forte, accent. What's behind that? F, it's a C. Okay, I'm going to put my playback technique, non-vib. Okay, and this last note ties into the next piece. So I'm going to go command, you can't hit tie because there's nothing to tie to. So we're going to hit command 8 and put a, I can never pronounce this word correctly, Laissez, Vibrer, I don't know, tie. Put that on, right? And it shows a little mini tie, which we often use, oops, I've got a dynamic, for percussion and cymbals and things like that to say don't choke it off, let it ring. I can change the appearance of this later in engraved mode to make it look more like a real tie by stretching it out. But this is looking very good. In terms of making it look exactly like this with text, like having this italic and whatnot, that's something that you can do by setting your paragraph styles, like basically your fonts for each type of text, into different things. So just, I might just give you a quick show. Library, paragraph styles. No, it's not in here. It's not in paragraph styles. It's in font styles, I believe. Yeah. Playing technique. At the moment, I'm using Tinos, size 11, but staff relative. I could switch this to italic and hit OK. Right, in fact, I might quickly do that. Right, and it should, if you give it a sec, it might take a little while because I've done a lot of it. There's a lot to change. There we go. Let's switch them all over. I don't want that, so let me, oops, undo. If you go to history, right, you can undo multiple things at once by going back, right? So I want to undo update score library, and it will go back and undo everything up till there. So that's also a really cool thing to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so with that all done, I think you've got most of the basics. The only, I guess, other thing that I might do, I might quickly run through one more part without talking and just kind of show you how I would input a score really quickly. I'm going to skip the viola part and go to violin 1 because my alto clef is not anywhere near as good as my treble clef. I'm a piano player, so my treble and bass are great. I'm also a double bass player, so my tenor clef is moderately acceptable, but my alto clef is not so much because it looks like a tenor clef, but not quite. Okay. I could click here and move, but I'm actually just going to scroll to bar 8. Now, just for the record, I use Shift X, which is just a regular staff attached text. That's what I put in things like solo markings and whatnot. So I'm going to do that, make it italic. But otherwise, I'm going to try and do this without talking too much, just so you can see some speed, but also so that you can get a little bit of a idea for where you could end up. Slow it down if you need to see something I've done. Harmonic. Whoops, I missed a solo marking. One thing I forgot to mention is if you want to skip over a particular duration to start inputting, so at bar 23 I need a crotchet rest, I could put in a rest using comma and pick a pitch, or I can just hit space, and that is whatever my current note value is. So say I'm on dotted minim, it would jump there. Also, if you don't like the spacing, so at the moment when you use the arrow you move in crotchets, you can change that down here in the bottom left corner, or by using Option or Alt and the brackets, you can change it to say you want to move in eighth notes. I personally prefer to use crotchets or dotted crotchets, but it's completely up to you. Let me keep going. I messed up my starting point somewhere. I'll shift that through in a sec. Let me just finish this phrase. Okay, where did I? So I put in some durations that were wrong. I was in dotted minims rather than crotchets. This is actually a good point, a good thing to teach though. So I want to shift this back because this rest is far too long. What I can do is click on it. In fact, let's click on this rest. I'd love to get rid of this minim worth of time. So I'm going to hit I for insert mode. And what that does, right, is it means that anything I've put after, like when I delete or change something or add time or take time, it's not going to fill it in with rest. So at the moment, actually, let me just get rid of the rest and then I'll explain it on the notes. Right. So if I turn insert mode off and I type crotchet, I get a crotchet with this space, right? It just transforms what I've got into a crotchet. If, however, I have insert mode on and turn it into a crotchet, it pulls everything else back, right? So it doesn't add any rests in there. It assumes that I've made an error and made things too big. So I'm going to leave insert mode on and do that for all three of these notes. All right. And now my slur's in the wrong spot. Again, this has an extent, so I can use Option Shift Left to fix that. Oop, that's supposed to go one more. And that should all be good. I got to change this to a crescendo poco a poco. Otherwise, they're all good. The other thing I could do, I can add time using insert mode. So if I hit I and I want to add in some crotchets, a bar's worth, let's say, I could do that, right? And similarly, I can delete that time. Insert mode is really useful for when you mess up. Otherwise, I think that most of that went okay. So let's keep going. Okay, so you can see that it wasn't perfect. I'm usually a little bit better than that, so I apologise a little bit. So I'm just going to quickly fix this up. I'm going to link these dynamics quickly. That's great. You would have seen that to do this, I input a dynamic. I put the same dynamic just for playback reasons, and then I went to Command 8 and I pressed hide intensity marking. So it is an MP expansiva, and I've hidden the dynamic marking. You saw me mess up this entry, and from there it just went downhill. I just used insert mode to fix what I was doing. That's all good. Missed this slur. Generally, I know as I'm typing it, in my brain, I'm like, oh god, I know I've messed this up, and I just quickly cancel all my slurs and my crescendos just so I can keep inputting notes and I can go back and fix up later. That's looking pretty good. I think that's all okay. Yep. Okay. Let's just quickly finish this off, and then I want to talk about one or two more things, and then I'll leave that as my little right mode introduction. Oops, I forgot my staccato dot. What am I doing? Okay. This last bit, again, you can probably imagine what's going to happen if I press F, right? Or even if I press, like if I do this and then tie it to my minimum. It's going to put in a semi-brief because that's the way it thinks it should be notated, right? Again, though, we really want to have that separate so that the musician can see. So we go O for force duration, and we can force that duration. Now this last bar I could again input the same thing, but I'm going to use my option click method. And just by the way, if I click on this note and I turn O off, it will go back to its default if I turn force duration off. Otherwise, I think that all went okay. Apart from my little mess up around here. So that's all good. So this is generally where I would go back to the start. And I would just hit play, and I'd listen, and I'd go, yeah, that sounds like it's right. Especially if I put in multiple parts, I can have a listen and go, those harmonies are a bit funky, right? Or whatever. There's a couple of other things I want to introduce you to first, though. So the first one is this little button up here. So you can see, at the moment, my Poco Rubato, it assumes 72 is where I should have that. So if I hit play, it's going to play at 72. If I go here and hit P for play, 72. Then if I go up here, where there's a rich, you can see it's at 72 still, and it's going to go down, and then it jumps back to 72 at the R tempo. You can see, let's do this one here. So 72, going down with the rich, R tempo, rich, pocket pimoso, it's going to jump up, right? The strict moderate 4, it's probably going to assume 72, I think, is the default when it doesn't know. If I want to check something, so let's say my tempo is actually, let's put a tempo in just here just for a minute, right? Shift T, let's say it's Allegro. And it's Q equals 140, right? I'll get that come up, right? That's good. So if I go here, I'm going to get 140. Right? Okay. I can't hear anything at 140. That's too quick. I can't tell if I've done something wrong. Let's play something a little bit more intricate. Right? I can't tell if that's right. Let's say I can't tell, right? I can hit this, right? Turn this off. Now, regardless of any of the score markings, the whole thing will play back at 120. Say 120 is too quick, I can click in here and there's a slider, right? I don't think I can just type, no, right? So I normally set it at about 60, right? And so now I get everything at 60 BPM, regardless of my writs and whatnot. This is a good speed where I can, let's go here, I can quickly check my semiquavers and things like that all line up. That sounds alright. So I probably haven't made a mistake. There is also a little transport window you can pop open, right, to do all of this too. There was one other thing that I was going to show you, which for the life of me I can't remember what it is. But that's okay, so it might wait till next time. Let me just quickly delete that tempo marking that we added. Otherwise, everything is going well, I think. So if I was now going to do violin 2, what I would probably do is select the whole staff of music. I'm just going to do this a little bit for now. Alt-click to bring it down, click where I want to start, hit enter, and then go lock durations, right? The reason I do that is because it's probably, a lot of it is probably the same rhythm. So let's say it's in thirds, right? So I could put in, let's say I'm reading it on the other side of the screen, for example. I can just put in my thirds. Whoops, that was a really bad one. I'm just doing this in my head. I can do that really, really easily and say it's instead... Oops, let's say it's like this, right? Oops. Actually, let's do that. Right. That would be really easy to do, right? I mean, this probably won't sound too bad, hopefully. Okay, it wasn't great, but that's alright. I've also just noticed that I've got this little slur wrong, so I'm going to make it... I'm going to shorten it to only 2 notes and then shift it across. But you can see how that can be really useful. There's only a couple of other things that I want to talk about in terms of note input. Tuplets are quite complicated. If you're not thinking about them correctly, tuplets can seem kind of crazy. They're not that difficult though. So I'm going along and I want to put a triplet in here. Now in this triplet I want to see quavers. So I press quaver and I press the tuplet button, which is a semicolon. I want to see 3 quavers, right? I want a normal triplet. So I want to see 3 quavers. And I press colon, I want to see it in the space that 2 quavers normally take up, right? So normally there would be 2 quavers here, I want to see 3. So I type 3:2. So 3 in the space of 2. And I get that, and then I can keep typing. And then I hit shift colon to turn it off, right? Okay. Let's do a super triplet. So now I want to see crotchets. I want to see 3 in the space of 2. But if I keep going, I will get more of that, right? Until I hit shift colon. Let's say it's something more complicated, right? I want to see semiquavers. I want to see 7 of them in the space of 4. So 7 in the space of this crotchet, which only holds 4 normally. So I might get like that. And you can do some crazy things, right? You can nest them. So you can do, for example, I want a super triplet. And then I want a triplet inside my super triplet of quavers. Right? You can do that if you want. You could do... I'm trying to think of something else. You can do the opposite. So say you want, you were in, probably you would use it. I'm just going to quickly, actually, never mind. You probably use this in 6/8 time or something, a compound time like that. But say you want quavers, right? I'm just going to quickly force some rests in. Just ignore this. Whoops. Okay. I'm going to force this rest in. So say if you're in 6/8 time, this would be a beat, right? So say in that beat, I only want to see, normally you would see this, right? And obviously they'd be beaten together. However, I only want 2. I want a duplet. So I want 2 in the space of 3. And you'd get that. Right? Obviously this looks a bit funny because, you know, we're actually in 4/4. But you get the idea. Now let me delete it. In terms of other things, just do a quick rundown of all these articulations because they're pretty common. In terms of accents, you've got the left bracket for accent or the apostrophe for marcato. If you select one or the other, it switches. You can't use them both. Staccato is right bracket. On a Mac, tenuto is backslash, right? Shift backslash or the pipe gets you this dot and tenuto, this staccato tenuto, or I think some people call it mezzo staccato. You've got a staccatissimo if you prefer with that curly brace. You've also got stressed and unstressed using these two. So it's all of the, whoopsie daisies, what am I doing? I don't use these stressed and unstressed very often, so I don't remember what the shortcuts are. So most of the time, or pretty much all of those commands are using the left and right braces and the backslash, and just using shift if you want various versions. So they're all in that little right kind of corner of your keyboard. It's really easy to use one hand. Already talking about slurs, I've talked about ties. Accidentals, you've got in a row, 0 for natural, dash for flat, plus for sharp. I talked about insert mode. I haven't talked about chords. Let me quickly go and do a chord, right? So for a chord, it works exactly the same. You press Q for chord mode, and the little plus pops up. What that means is when you press a note, it won't move on. So let's say I want a dotted minim, I want a D minor 7 chord. So I picked a D. It hasn't moved on, so I can keep typing, and it will always go above. If I want below, I can hit my usual Control B to go a B below, and it will put things in below my chord, right? If I want to move on, I can press space, and it will move that just like it normally would. And then I can put my next thing in. Space. Or, if I press Q, hang on, sorry, let me put something in. If I press Q, it will also, to turn chord mode off, it will move to the next one. That's pretty much the only difference for chord mode. You just got to be a little bit careful when making ties in chord mode. It does what you'd expect it to do, but I don't write chords that often because I don't write piano parts out that often, so it always messes with me a little bit when I have to remember how they work. Other things with chords that are really nice and easy, you can select a chord, hit Shift O for ornaments and type ARP for arpeggio, or let's say you were in a, maybe you specifically wanted no arpeggio, or you're in a violin part and you don't want them to, what do you call it? I'm forgetting now. Basically arpeggiate it, right? You want them to play it as a double stop or a triple stop. You can non-arp, right? The ornaments pop over, which is what I've been using, also has room for, put in a note, O, TR for trill. There is, take trill out. You can do a scoop, right? You can do a doit. You can, I think you can turn, there's tons of other things. They are all also over here. So if I go to the ornaments one, you can see all the different ornaments you can have, right? There's mordants, there's turns, there's glisses. If you want a gliss on a keyboard part from a specific note to another specific note, just, can select them. O gliss. And you can change it in the properties if you prefer a wavy gliss, or you want it to have no text. By the way, if you want this right zone to come up, Command 9, Command 8 for the lower, Command 7 for the left. I leave the left one up and these two down most of the time. 9 and 8 I use a lot, though. Clefs are all in here if you need them. Again, though, I mostly use the popover. But let's say you wanted to do something ottava, so 8VA, right? You type it in the octave you want it to sound, then you select the section, Shift C for the clefs prop over, 8VA, right? Because Dorico, you got to remember, always thinks about what the note is. It doesn't think about how you want it to look, right? So you go, I want a C6. If you use C4 as middle C, that is, right? I want a C6. So the 8VA modifies the way a C6 looks, but this note is still a C6. You've got key signatures there. You can change to different tonalities and make new tonalities if that's your thing. Some weird and wacky accidentals here. I might just quickly talk about, say I'm in a key signature, I've got F sharp, and now I want F double sharp for some reason. You could do this, or the way I usually do it, because it's a bit quicker, is put in a G natural and press Alt minus. Alt minus shows, you can show it as, just changes whether you see it as a G or an A double flat or an F double sharp, right? It just changes which note you see it as. You can Alt minus and Alt plus. All your meters are in here. You can create some irregular ones. I don't want to talk about irregular meters here because I don't want to stuff up my work, but they're pretty easy to work out. There's a manual as well. Some common tempos. You can do listesso, you can do tempo primo, that kind of stuff. You can do the pure mossos, you can do rits and allegandos. You can put in metric modulations. You can do all of this in the tempos popover. So say I want quarter note equals half note now. Let me just delete this music because I'll forget otherwise. Right, if I go to the top, there it is. Dynamics, again, I did most of them pretty quickly in the popover, but you can do it there. I already went through most of these. Repeat endings are here. DC, DS, you can put all of those in from the popover. Anything you see here, you can put in from the popover, basically. If you need a rhythm slash section, you can do this, right? Or you can Shift R slash, and you get a slashed region, which will show chord symbols. Delete that region. You want a repeat bar. They look like percentages, so put a percentage in. Again, if you extend it over a region, you get that, and the default is to put counts in, but you can change that. Say you want to repeat every 2 bars, or you want to repeat every bar, but you want every second bar grouped, right? Or you could repeat every bar, and you want, let me just quickly, come on, you want the counts to appear every 2 bars, like that. Or you might want the counts to appear every 4 bars, but you want to start the count from 2, right? Because you had 2 bars written out. Or you could go, you want parentheses or not, right? There's tons of things you can change and all that. Pretty much anything you need to change the way it looks can be done in the properties panel. You can do numbered bars as well. So say you have, oops, I need to go one more. All your bar lines are in here. Again, I would just use the popover. Just as we made fermatas, you can put a comma in, or you can put in a caesura, right? Or if you prefer, you can always type them as they look, right? I think so, anyway. Right, yeah. There's different types of caesuras if you like. There's different length fermatas if you like. All the playing techniques that you would possibly want are in here. You can access them all using that Shift P popover. So say I really want con sordino, or I really want open. Like I've used a mute. Open will give me an open symbol. There's no note here, obviously, so it's probably not going to give me a symbol. But I could also go. Sorry, the computer is just catching up. The first time you use a playing technique on each instrument, so I've never used open on a piccolo before, it takes a little while to load. So let me pick something that I like, a trumpet. Right. If you prefer, you can open text and it will give you the text version. there are lines like dashes and all sorts of things. You can make your own. So I've got a few from Scoring Express. You can tie them to note heads or bar lines or whatever. There's also cues. Now cues are really good. Say I want a cue in a part. Let's say this little bit here with the violins. The piccolo's listening out for that. So I'm going to click on the piccolo bit and I go create cue, right? Or I can hit, I think it's Shift U for cue, right? I want violin 1, and it pops in up there, and you can see violin 1, right? If I go here, I can go, okay, I really want articulations shown as well. Not that there are any. I really want to see slurs. I want to see dynamics, right? Remembering that all of these settings can be changed in the defaults, right? You only want to change anything in here if you want to override the default, right? But say, for example, I want to shift this, so I want to see it down here. And you can say, I want to show that it's been shifted, right? You could do, this is only a rhythmic cue, right? And I want slashes, right? There's all sorts of things you can do. So that's really useful. But however, the main benefit of cues, well, actually, that's an awesome thing about cues, and they automatically don't show in scores, but do in parts, which is good. However, this suggest cues dialog box is great. So you can say after 30 seconds, right, so the bass has not played for 30 seconds, it probably wants a cue before its entry, and it will tell you, right? And you can put a cue in there, and you can tell it whether to consider whether rehearsal marks or ignore them, or consider other cues that are already there. So you can really suggest cues, which is fantastic. Whoopsie daisies. Delete that note. Right, so that's amazing. That's awesome. There's a video thing. I don't do much scoring to film, but if you do, that's great. And then there's comments down here if you are working collaboratively. Only other thing I didn't show really is how to get appoggiaturas. You use this slash. If you want an appoggiatura rather than acciaccatura, you can use alt slash to get rid of it. And you can kind of see down here that it's changed. You can switch back and forth. If you're doing dotted notes, you can do alt dot to add a second and third dot if that's your preference. That's pretty much everything. Voices, so if you would like to put something in a second voice, there's no currently, I lied, right? Let me pick something that doesn't have one. What wouldn't I have entered? Let's say euphonium. Yeah, that's good. Right. Putting in notes, I also want to have something in a second voice. There's currently no second voice available because I've only ever used one voice in euphonium. So if I hit Shift V, I get a new voice, right? Plus a downstem voice. Now I can add stuff, right? Okay. Now I really don't want both of these crotchet rests. They're redundant. I can do this. I can go edit and I can go remove rests. And that will force it to remove that rest. Or I could go jump bar, remove rests. However, I work with multiple voices so often that I've made a command for it, Control R, on a Mac anyway. That works too. So now, anytime I want, I can just hit V and it will cycle between all the voices I've currently got. I can add a new voice. I can add a second downstem voice or a second upstem voice. You have as many voices as you like. Generally speaking though, I only really use voices for keyboard parts and vocal parts. Most of the time, the rest of the time I don't use voices for single line instruments. That's pretty much everything. There is a note before, pitch before duration input you can turn on if that's what you prefer. I personally don't because I've always used duration before pitch in both Sibelius and now that I've moved to Dorico. That's pretty much everything, I think. The only things I haven't covered are divisi, which I'd like to do separately just because there's more things that I don't want to talk about. And then the other thing is that I really just quickly want to mention is signposts. So you can see a lot of the time when you have whenever you have things like key signatures or whatever, it will create these little signposts. And when you're working in galley view, which is what I normally work in most of the time, right, this can get quite kind of unwieldy. All these things that you don't normally see on a printed score, right? Even these bar numbers, right? These bar numbers are so helpful when you're putting stuff in. However, it makes it really hard to see whether I've got this pitch right. So you can hold the little tilde down, right? Or it's actually a inverted comma, right, with the tilde above it, just above your tab bar. If you hold it down, excuse the stream that's going to come out down the corner, it basically turns off everything you wouldn't see, right? So now everything that I wouldn't see, that F major thing here, is gone, right? If I go to a bit that's a little bit more complicated, let's say I go to a part, right? You can open a new tab here. I'm going to go to a violin part, right? Violin 1. And I'm going to go to something that looks pretty disgusting. Just trying to quickly find something that's got lots of signposts on it. I might not have anything. Right, okay, this will do, right? There's lots of stuff that I don't really, that is distracting me. There's these signposts all around the place. There's the system track, which is kind of useful, but also kind of annoying. There's a playing technique that I've got hidden because I've got a non-vib here, but I want that to change back. And there was I'm engraving a part that didn't mention it specifically, right? So what I can do is I can hold that down and all that stuff goes away. You can just see what it would look like when printed. You can tell that I haven't done any ink formatting here for two reasons. One, because it's working on 4 bars a line and it hasn't chosen good. Like, this is not a good place to not have a system break, right? But that's okay, because the idea behind Dorico is that you set up your score, then you write it all out, then you engrave it, then you can change playback at any point in time, but then you print it, right? So you do all your writing stuff and only worry about writing it all in. And then in engrave mode, you can change the way it looks. Right. Okay, that's everything I wanted to touch on here. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. But I'm not great at checking them because I don't use YouTube that often, but I will do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, I'm pretty active on the Facebook group, especially the Learn Dorico for Finale Refugees group. So you should be able to find me there. But otherwise, best of luck, and I'll hopefully see you in another video.